Hello, this is Josh Findlay with the Election Protection Podcast, where we talk all things election integrity, brought to you by the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Today, we are joined by Representative Smit from Michigan, a newish state legislator who has already dove into leadership in the legislature up there and already gotten into some controversy with the Secretary of State, working on election integrity issues. Representative Smit, it is great to have you with us.
Well, good morning. Thank you. I'm happy to be on here.
Now, I know I'm going to let you go through your bio a little bit, but you've only been in the legislature for a couple of years so far. This, I believe, is your second term. But already, you've got a lawsuit going against the Secretary of State. Tell us a little bit about your background, why you got into politics, why you're interested in election integrity, and I think maybe some experience you had with elections prior to joining the legislature.
Yeah, sure. So I initially got into politics in about 2015. I was appointed as a township clerk in Martin and didn't really know a whole lot about elections per se until I was appointed in that position. And if you remember, 2016 was a very, very contentious election year with Trump and Hillary on the ballot. So when I got appointed at the end of 15, had to run and conduct 4 elections in 2016. That was like drinking from a fire hose, and it made me learn it very, very quickly, which was a positive. But I had discovered that I really loved serving the public in that way, being an elected official and being involved in my community. And I was very content and happy with that, and saw myself actually being a clerk for probably, 20, 30 years, as long as the public kept electing me to do that job in my township. And then 2020 happened, and that got me involved at a deeper level because of essentially what happened in Michigan, particularly in COVID, and the just government overreach that we saw in so many states, but Michigan was at the forefront of that. So I just couldn't sit anymore on the sidelines and not get involved at a deeper level.
Well, let me interrupt you here for a second. Michigan is one of those states where the town clerks run the elections.
That's right.
Right? So what did you see on the ground in 2020 in that position?
So a lot of things, a lot of irregularities, if you will, and we were getting a lot of directives from the Secretary of State, Benson, that was advising clerks on what to do and how to handle things during this pandemic that we were in. And a lot of these were directives that were not even followed by the law or statute, if you will. And that got me questioning things like, why is she saying we don't have to really do signature verification on all these mail-in ballots? As you know, they were trying to get everybody to vote by mail because we were all going to die if we showed up into the polls and voted in person. So this whole scheme to all vote by mail happened. We were given directives as clerks to not really signature verify. So essentially, if there was a dot on these mail-in ballots, you were to just accept that because of the overload of work that the clerks were going to be having, and they simply weren't going to be able to do their job. So if there was a marking on there of any sort, that's fine. And I'm like, this is not okay. She's actually telling us to not go by the law, which I had a problem with. And then there were many other things, the Zuckerbucks. That was a big thing that we saw, millions and millions of dollars pouring into Michigan and really all the swing states that were influencing our elections and influencing the turnout and the poll workers that were at these precincts. So a lot of shady stuff actually that happened. And I'm like, this is not okay. And that really is what spurred me to run for office too. There was redistricting that was happening in our state as well. A lot of things were going on. The state reps in my area, however those maps were to end up, being finalized, everybody was term limited. So whatever map was actually going to be chosen, it didn't really matter because it would have been an open seat for me running. So I had just decided, throw my hat in, do what I could to help save our republic, if you will. And that's what I felt like truly needed to happen here in Michigan because of what was being done by our governor, Secretary of State, and rogue attorney general.
Well, thank you so much for your service. It's amazing that you were able to take those experiences and then build off of those to get elected to the state house. Now, you were elected in 2022, and you have already been elected by your peers. Was it President Pro Tem of the House?
Yes, that's right. Speaker Pro Tempore. So that was, I didn't see that coming either. I guess I will say the Lord works in mysterious ways. I thought I would just be a clerk, love to serve my community. He had a different calling for me. I followed that. He's brought me here to the legislature. And now, I was approached over a year ago to run for that position as Speaker Pro Tempore. And I just was like scratching my head. I'm a brand new member here. We were motivated to win the House back. And yes, I wanted to do everything I could to get majority back, but that was a tall task. And I didn't know if I felt qualified and ready for that as a, freshman member, considering running for that. So it was made very, very clear by the support of my caucus on my side that there was strong support. And in fact, one person said, you know what, Smit, if you don't run or if you don't get out there and run for this, actually, we're going to nominate you anyways. And I thought, well, okay, I guess we'll just go out. And it's been an honor.
That's amazing. Well, and it looks to me like they picked the right person because you are already making waves, which is something we love to see.
Yeah, making waves. And it's certainly been, it's good. I know I'm doing what I need to be doing in the right thing, but it's comes with a lot of arrows too, as you can imagine.
Oh, definitely.
Going
Definitely,
against big
especially in
bureaucracy. Yeah.
That's right. No, you've got a lot of opposition, which leads us to what we want to talk about today. Tell us a little bit about this legal controversy with the Secretary of State, with Secretary Benson.
Yeah, so I am, last term, my freshman year, when I first came in, we were in the minority. In fact, there was a trifecta going on. Governor Whitmer, Democrat, the Senate is Democrat majority, and the House is majority. So I was not, the vice chair of elections my first term. And after Republicans had won the House back last November, I was fairly certain I was going to probably be the chair of elections as being the vice chair of the minority. That's typically how that all works. And so I thought, I'm going to start getting ahead of this here. I had made a request to the Department of State asking to have some of these training manuals that are put out there to the public, to the clerks. Thousands of people have access to this training manuals. I had it when I was a clerk. These are not state secrets. But I thought, to get ahead of things and to start making sure that we are following the law, we are having lawful directives given to our clerks, it would be important information for myself as the chair of this committee and the committee to have. So I put this request into the Department of State last November, right after, the Republicans won, and that fell on deaf ears. We got into our term early in the year of 2025 and started pushing and pressing harder for that information. And we were just getting stonewalled. It's going to be hundreds of man hours for us to produce these documents, $9,000 they were going to charge me for a FOIA request. I'm like, hold on. This is the state legislature. We don't need to pay for FOIA requests to hold a State Department accountable. And she's been given that title as the chief election official, but she's not the one that determines the laws and writes the policy and votes this stuff out. So it was astounding to me to have the pushback and the stonewalling that we received. And it was just, I serve actually with two other representatives that are former clerks as well. And so there's three of us in the state house that are either township clerks or county clerks. So we teamed together and we're just like, yeah, we need to keep pushing on this. I requested it again further. And finally it got to the point where she just wasn't going to cooperate at all. And next thing had to be, then we will issue a subpoena requiring her to hand these documents over. And lo and behold, she's not complying with that either. So that's led into actually a lawsuit that we're battling out in the courts right now with her. Here we are 10 months later.
10 months.
10 months.
That's crazy. So you said something really important. You said these are the training manuals that go to all of the clerks. This is not something that should be
No,
secretive, right? Thousands of people
that's right.
have access to
So
this,
every clerk
right?
and all their deputy clerks or election officials of the different jurisdictions across the state have access to this. And it's through the e-learning portal, if you will. That's a password protected way. And these are all the guidance and directives and training manuals that are from and issued by the Department of State under Secretary Benson. So it just is it's unbelievable as a policymaker and a state legislator that we can't have access to that.
Well, so it's interesting. I think one of the responses from the Assistant Attorney General to your subpoena was she said that there was no legislative purpose in making this request, right? So let's set the record straight. What is the legislative purpose of trying to review these training manuals? It seems obvious, but I think it's important to set the record straight on
I
that.
think it's very obvious. As a lawmaker, our Michigan Constitution and federal Constitution is the legislature determines the time, manner, place of elections. And if that is in our law, the plenary power through the legislature to have that, it would make sense that we should be able to see these training manuals, which are implementing some of that to the clerks. And it's a really weak argument. I can't even believe they use that.
Well, and I think it's important to point out how nefarious this could be, right? Because the left, we saw in 2020, weaponized the election process for their benefit, right? And a lot of times they did that unilaterally, whether it was leftist governors, leftist secretaries of state, whoever it is. The legislature should be the ones making the rules around elections. But after 2020, we really got away from that. And I think it's problematic. And it seems like Secretary Benson and to some extent Attorney General Nessel are trying to continue that pattern.
They absolutely are. Right? Yeah. And they're going full throttle with it. They're not stopping, but you know what? There's a new breed of legislators here in Michigan, and we are stepping up and pushing back and fighting like we haven't seen before. So that also is helpful, that I don't feel like I'm on an island here trying to accomplish some of these things and really sell to my caucus, if you will, of why we need this and the importance of this. And it's my responsibility as the chair of election and integrity that we are appropriating and drafting and passing laws for Michigan that comply. And so these training manuals we really need to see to make sure that there's no conflicts there. It's really nothing other than just want to make sure that we are following the laws. And if we need to create additional laws to back some of this up, then that would be a meaningful way for us to do it too.
Right.
So it's just crazy. I would have never thought that this would be a fight that I had to have, in the legislature.
That's right. Well, and to get into the background of this a little bit, Speaker Hall said that Secretary Benson already has a history of putting out guidance that may not comply with state law, which is, part of the reason I would imagine that led to this inquiry in the first place. Can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe some examples of guidance that she has put out that is either, contrary to state law or possibly just her interpretation of what the law says?
Absolutely. And that's exactly why. I mean, there has been 7 lawsuits here in Michigan that have been against Secretary Benson, the Department of State, that she has been directly violating the statute here for elections. And so that right there should be enough of a reason why we would like to just simply have access to this and make sure that it's all compliant. And secondarily, one of the examples would be, as I mentioned earlier, the signature verification. Actually, when I was a clerk in 2020, the county clerk at the time, still is actually, sued Secretary Benson and won that lawsuit on her directives for the signature verification and not following the law on that. So it's, we've got precedent in the courts. We've got, the courts on our side, the Constitution on our side. I mean, the duty and responsibility as legislators of the people that have elected us on our side to just keep moving forward and doing the right thing with the situation. because she's just blatantly violating the law in many ways. And you mentioned too, she's doing it through her administrative rules too, promulgating and expanding voting. Now, the rules, administrative rules and promulgation of rules is not statute, but she's trying to further expand the voting process that way. So,
well, and I think that's the tension, right? And for our listeners, those of us that work a lot in election integrity, the analogy that I like to use is legislators often put together a blueprint for how to build a house. Mm-hmm. And the Secretary of State and those election administrators are like the contractors. Yeah. They're the ones that go in and build it. They have to operationalize what the law says, which means that a lot of times administrators like Secretary Benson can put out their own interpretation of what the law says that may not have actually been behind the legislative intent. In cases we've seen, like you said, that they'll put out something that just violates the law, kind of with an attitude of, well, challenge me in court. Mm-hmm. And that's especially problematic in Michigan, where the Attorney General agrees with the Secretary of State a lot on these things and probably doesn't have the right prosecution that, the right legal pursuance of these issues. And so that's why it's so important that the legislature have oversight over what the Secretary of State is doing.
Absolutely. And in fact, this morning, at 9 o'clock, I was able to testify before JCAR, which is the Joint Administrative Rules Committee. And that's where the secretary has actually got a rule set that she is proposing to the committee to adopt and codify, if you will, all of these things. And I had to show up in opposition to that because one of the things that she's doing is actually in violation of federal law too. So the directive that she's giving to some of our clerks and election officials it's violating federal law. So, and you got to think about this. Our clerks and deputy clerks, they feel in many cases that Secretary Benson is their boss and they have to follow what the directives and advice is given to them. So they're caught sometimes between a rock and a hard place too. I mean, they're not election law experts. They're doing the best they can. And thank goodness we've got so many great clerks throughout the state. But it's hard when they're given information that could be contrary to law.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're exactly right about that. So let me ask you this: where is the case currently? Just so we all know. I mean, there's been no resolution here, but what is the legal placement?
We were ordered to have a mediation, and basically the judge that we have said, we're going to turn this over and I'm going to order so-and-so, a different judge, to mediate between the Department of State, Secretary Benson, and the oversight chair, Speaker of the House, et cetera, and our outside counsel. So that had happened last week, Friday, and unfortunately there was no settlement made in this mediation. Essentially, the Secretary Benson had just said in the department, well, we're going to continue to just give the information that we feel is needed at our convenience. And that's what we've been seeing she's doing, just trickling out little bits and pieces of information because she's claiming that it's confidential and it cannot be released to the public. Well, our issue was, no, you can give it to the Committee of Election Integrity and the Committee of Oversight. And that doesn't have to be shared publicly, right? But for our own need and use of that. But they won't agree to that settlement. So, unfortunately, we're going to just see this be drug out in court. And I do believe that we have the law and Constitution on our side. And we'll come out successful in this court battle.
Well, we certainly hope so. And then I've got to ask this. The legal fight here seems to be a power struggle between the legislature and the Secretary of State. I think it goes without saying that a Republican legislature and a Democrat Secretary of State, right? But we've also said that these materials are not secret; they're out there. So, one, is there another way to potentially get these materials? And I know the real issue is about the fight, right? The Secretary of State's got to give those, but is there another way to get these? And in addition to that, have there been any clerks or anybody that has raised flags about potential things in here that violate state law since you were a town clerk?
Yes, Absolutely, and that's another reason for the need of this too, because I have, being the chair of elections integrity, I've had numerous people come forward or reach out to our office saying, "Hey, look, I don't think this is right." And, they question this. So it's my job to follow up, provide that oversight and accountability with the department to make sure that that stuff is being conducted in a lawful manner. So yes, I have had clerks reach out to me, county clerks reach out to me and show me certain places, even within the directives and new directives that come out, or changes that were just subtly made and all of a sudden they weren't even made aware that awesome, this has changed. So, and I've even reached back out to the department and said, can you please explain this, right? And there's just never any sort of valid, good explanation for what is being done. And that brings me with no other point to believe that they're just doing this for a nefarious way or purpose, and to skirt the law. That's what we're up against.
Exactly right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I think we all need to be concerned here. I think, one thing that we need to draw attention to, well, to back up for a second, you described the issues that came about in the 2020 election, and we're about to come up on another set of midterm elections here. It's important to remember that the villains of the 2020 election were elected during the 2018 midterms, right? Governor Whitmer, Attorney General Nessel, and Secretary Benson were all elected in flips during the 2018 midterms. And they used those offices to gain, I would say, unprecedented power in the state.
Absolutely.
Right? We're coming up on another set of midterms in Michigan where those offices are up again. What can we expect election integrity wise in Michigan for this midterm? Can we have any hope that there will be pushback if they try to, if they try more shenanigans with these elections, let's say?
Absolutely. And being that these are midterms, these are federal elections too throughout the state, with Congress and, U.S. Senate seats on the ballot. I am so grateful for the Trump administration that is in office right now. So my only hope, and I think the hope of the state and the people and for Republicans here, is the fact that there is going to be all hands on deck again here in Michigan, because it's needed. This is going to be ground zero in the midterms, with so much at stake here with, as you mentioned, the governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state, the state house, the state senate, the U.S. House, and the U.S. Senate seat that is open because of a retirement. So I have hope that we can win these seats back. It's really hard, just in my perspective, from one chamber, with what we can do and actually get passed here as far as creating and cleaning up some of our voting laws for accountability for the clean voter rolls and audits and all of these things. It's really not going to be able to be something that we can get past. So we need the federal government to just intervene where they can and help us out and get things cleaned up, and hope and pray that we win. At least our executive, the House, and the Senate back.
Well, there are a lot of people that are going to be putting forth efforts in Michigan and hoping and praying along with you, Representative Smit. So let me ask you this. We've got a large grassroots audience. People are always asking us, how can we get involved? What can people in Michigan do and across the country to get involved to support your efforts to follow this legal process that you're in? And help hold Michigan elections accountable?
Sure. So one of the things I always encourage people to do to get involved is to go to your jurisdiction, your township, municipality that conducts elections. Because in Michigan here, they are conducted at the ground level, the local level. So become an election inspector. You really are the hands and feet and the eyes right there, overseeing all of that. And it's a really important work to do. And obviously in Detroit, we have an issue. We don't have parity with our election inspectors. So you can become a trained election inspector with just a couple hours of time through your county, wherever you live here in Michigan. put your name and request in to work the elections. We've got 9 days of early voting prior to an election, so we need more election inspectors. It's a big effort that we're trying to put out there. And then just make us aware if you do see anything that is of concern, or you have stories that you may need to be brought to light on some of this stuff. So it's an information war. We have been suppressed the last several years. In so many ways to where it's hard to get our information out there. So if we don't know, we can't do anything about it, fight about it, get it out there.
Well, and how can people let you and the legislature know if they are seeing any issues?
Call my office, email me. They can email me at Rachelle Smit at house.mi.gov. They can call our office. I've got a website. They can follow me on Facebook to see what's going on, stay up to date on things. We're constantly putting press releases out there, doing press conferences. As I mentioned, it's just an information war. We don't have the media on our side. So thank goodness we've got people and folks like you that have podcasts, because this is really changing the trajectory of our news, I believe.
Well, we hope so. It's important to get the truth out there and to get conservative interpretations of what's happening.
That's right.
So, Representative Smit, thanks for joining us and good luck in this fight.
Thank you so much, Josh.
This is Josh Findlay with the Election Protection Podcast. You can follow us on X at TPPF Elections and catch all past and current episodes of the Election Protection Project podcast on the Texas Public Policy Foundation YouTube page. Like, subscribe, and follow. Thank you.